The broadcast of the docu-series by Netflix on Jeffrey Epstein in 2020 has once again put in focus the extent of and the modus operandi adopted by a prominent public figure in the United States of America to promote modern-day slavery. The investigation conducted revealed that he sexually assaulted girls as young as 14 years old, and his victims are innumerable. He indulged in his nefarious activities by essentially building a pyramid scheme whereby underage girls were paid to bring in their friends, and the chain went on unbroken. Therefore, the accused became recruiters of unsuspecting victims, knowing fully well the implications of their acts. Though this may sound counterintuitive, it isn't. It is most common feature of human trafficking, both for flesh trade as well as labor. This begs the question as to whether these girls are victims of human trafficking or criminals for perpetuating it in broad daylight. It is exactly because of this baffling question that we need to understand what human trafficking is and how it operates. This can be answered best by looking into the definition provided under Palermo Protocol, which breaks down the essentials of trafficking into three main elements: the act, the means, and the purpose. The act of recruitment or transportation or transfer or harboring or receiving persons whereby there has been use of means like threat, force, coercion, abduction, fraud, abuse of power or weakness of a person, or by giving payments or benefits to a person in control of the victim for purposes of exploitation, which may be prostitution, forced or bonded labor, slavery or similar practices, or even for organ transportation. Keeping in view the practical realities of how and why human trafficking takes place, it provides that consent of the trafficking victim is immaterial and every person below 18 years of age is a minor. What remains the core of human trafficking is compelled service, which may be termed as involuntary servitude, slavery, or practices similar to slavery, debt bondage, and forced labor. The aforementioned practice of servitude can be prevalent in various types of businesses, work on farms, in agriculture, or be engaged in by individuals by way of domestic labor. Similarly, so far as slavery for sexual exploitation is concerned, it may manifest in various forms including prostitution through online means. Next cause of concern for us should be to understand what circumstances create breeding grounds for human trafficking to occur. While anyone may become a victim of trafficking, irrespective of gender or socioeconomic conditions, still some people are more vulnerable than others. In a majority of cases, poverty is the root cause, coupled with situations of broken or abusive family circumstances, or losing a parent, caregiver, or a spouse, all of which could make a person more susceptible to be picked on. Factors like substance abuse, being displaced from one's community, or being a runaway or homeless youth are also crucial reasons. In terms of trafficking, it is also pertinent to understand the importance of geography. Such nations or states or cities from where the victims are procured is often called source, while nations, states, cities where there is a demand for trafficked victims is called the destination. Traffickers also tend to follow some well-established trafficking routes, which are referred to as transit states. For example, Jharkhand serves as a source state for recruiting individuals for domestic labor in big cities like Mumbai and Delhi. Notably, India as a nation serves not only as a source but also as destination and transit for trafficking for various purposes like forced labor, domestic servitude, forced marriages, commercial sexual exploitation, and other emerging forms of trafficking like organ trade, etc. Just to highlight the extent of trafficking within India, it is pertinent to note that government data indicates that every 8 minutes a child goes missing in India, and only half of such children are even traced. As per Global Slavery Index, about 8 million people live in slavery in India. In this context, international community has made several efforts to recognize the crime of human trafficking and adopt measures to combat the same. In this regard, Protocol on Prevention, Suppression and Punishment of Trafficking in Persons under UN Convention on Transnational Organized Crime and SARC Convention are notable. India is a signatory to both. Considering the porous borders of India with its neighbors like Bangladesh and Nepal, from where a sizable influx of individuals is noted, a memorandum of understanding between India and Bangladesh was entered into in June 2015. In the slew of reforms recommended under Justice J.S. Verma Committee, introduction of provisions to deal with human trafficking as an offence was also recommended. This led to substitution of Section 370 and insertion of Section 370A in Indian Penal Code, which defines trafficking and penalizes it. Would you believe it if I said that all of us have been a part of human trafficking in some manner or the other? Well, just think about the garments manufactured in sweat factories where workers are made to work inhuman hours with no regard to basic facilities like sanitation and ventilation, or the underage domestic help who works in your neighborhood and should be in school, or even a domestic worker who, though above 18 years of age, but is made to work 17 to 18 hours a day with basic minimum wages, practically creating conditions of forced and bonded labor. The problem with trafficking for labor, though prevalent in our daily lives, is often viewed less seriously. Having talked about the above, let's burst some myths. Myth number 1. Traffickers target victims they don't know. Fact: a majority of the time, victims are trafficked by someone they know, such as a friend, family member, or a romantic partner. Myth number 2. Only girls and women are victims of human trafficking. Fact: boys and men are just as likely to be victims of human trafficking. However, they are less likely to be identified and reported. Myth number 3. All human trafficking involves sex or prostitution. Fact: human trafficking can include forced labor, domestic servitude, organ trafficking, debt bondage, recruitment of children as child soldiers, and or sex trafficking and forced prostitution. Myth number 4. Trafficking involves traveling, transporting, or moving a person across borders. Fact: human trafficking is not the same thing as smuggling, which are two terms that are commonly confused. Trafficking does not require movement across borders. In fact, in some cases, a child could be trafficked and exploited from their own home. Myth number 5. People being trafficked are physically unable to leave or held there against their will. Fact: trafficking can involve force, but people can also be trafficked through threats, coercion, deception. People in trafficking situations can be controlled through drug addiction, violent relationships, manipulation, lack of financial independence, or isolation from family and friends, in addition to physical restraint or harm. Myth number 6. Trafficking primarily occurs in developing countries. Fact: trafficking occurs all over the world, though the most common forms of trafficking can differ by country. The United States, for example, is one of the most active sex trafficking countries in the world, where exploitation of trafficking victims occurs in cities, suburbs, and rural areas.